Hi, I'm Beth from My Tutoring Bee, and in today's video we are talking about how to find slope when given 2 points. I have a few examples for us, so let's go ahead and get started. All right, the first thing that we need to look at is this formula. So we've got m equals y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Now when I'm working with students who are new to this, it can get really confusing with all of these different letters and numbers. So we're going to clear all of that up with some examples for today. And in this first example, I'm going to show you where this formula comes from, why it's set up that way. In my previous video, I talked about how to find slope when given a graphed line, such as this one on this coordinate plane. And in that video, we talked about rise over run. So how far do we need to go up and how far do we need to go over to get from one point to another on the same line? So let's talk about that. Let's talk about the rise portion of that rise over run, finding the slope. What is it that we're actually doing here? Well, we want to find out the distance of the y value for each of those points. So as we can see, this first point's y value is 2. This second point's y value is 4. So we want to know what's the difference. What is the distance between those two spaces? So that's where the y2 and y1 comes from. A lot of times the 2 and the 1 can be a little bit confusing. All that means is that we are taking the y coordinate from the first point and the y coordinate from the second point and subtracting them. So let's go ahead and do that. We're going to take 4, which is our y coordinate from the second point, and we're going to subtract the 2, which is the y coordinate from the first point. Okay, and that is going to be over. So now let's go to the x values. When we are looking at the run between 2 points, we want to know what is the x distance away from this x distance. So same thing here. We want to know the x value of the second point minus the x value of the first point. So that's all those little 1s and 2s mean. They represent which x value or which y value that number is coming from. So for our x values, we're going to take 7 from the second point and subtract 2 from the first point. So hopefully that makes sense why we have the y points at the top and the x points at the bottom. When we're learning about coordinate plane, we learn and we practice to deal with the x's first and the y's second. So it kind of seems opposite to have the y's on top and then the x's on the bottom. But that is because that is that rise over run. So the rise always has to deal with the y's and the run always has to deal with the x's. So that's where that comes from. All right, so then let's solve this. 4 minus 2 is 2. 7 minus 2 is 5. So then that is our slope for this particular line. Our slope is 2 over 5. And m is a letter that we just typically use to represent slope in a lot of the formulas that we use for slope. So that's why we're using m for the slope. Okay, now that we've looked at that visually, what it looks like and what it means for this formula in terms of how it looks on the graph, let's use it when we are just given just 2 points. There's no graph involved here. We're just given the coordinate pairs of 2 points that are on a line, and we're going to use our formula. So again, here's our formula, y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Now, you can flip and do y1 minus y2 as long as you take the x coordinate from the first point and minus the x coordinate from the second point. So these have to match up. If you are starting with the second point, you must start with the second point for the x values as well. If you're starting with the first y point, then you must start with the first x point as well. So we'll take a look at that and do some examples with using that in either way. But a common mistake that my students will make is they'll start with y1 and they'll subtract y2 and then they'll switch it up and do x2 minus x1, and that's not going to give us the correct slope if we switch any of those around. So let's start off by labeling our points. This is going to make it a little bit easier for us to put the correct number in the correct places. So my 5 is the x value for my first point, and the 6 is the x value for my second point. And then the 0 is the y value for my first point, and the 2 is the y value for my second point. So that will hopefully help me just to know where to put each of these in the correct position. So let's start with our y's. y2 is 2 minus 0, which is our y1, over x2, which is 6, minus 5, which is our x1. And then let's solve. 2 minus 0 is 2. 6 minus 5 is 1, and then we're going to simplify that fraction. 2 over 1 we can just write as 2. So our slope is 2 for this particular problem. Now let's see what that would look like if we switched it and we did it this way with y1 minus y2 over x1 minus x2. So we're going to start with that y1, which is 0, subtract y2, which is 2, and that's going to be over x1, which is 5, minus x2, which is 6. And when we simplify that, 0 minus 2 is negative 2. 5 minus 6 is negative 1. Negative 2 divided by negative 1 gives us a positive 2. So you can see that we wind up with the same slope of m equals 2 for this particular line that contains these 2 points. Let's go ahead to problem 2. I'm again going to label my numbers, so x1, x2, and then we've got y1, y2, and we're going to start with those y's. So we've got negative 1. Now we could write minus negative 2. This just always seems a little bit messy to me, so whenever we've got minus a negative number, I just go ahead and change that to plus 2. And then that's over 0 minus 3. So we've got the 0 is our second x coordinate, and the 3 is our first x coordinate. Now let's go ahead and solve this. So negative 1 plus 2 gives us positive 1. 0 minus 3 gives us negative 3. So I'm just going to rewrite this as negative 1 over 3. This is the same. If one of your numbers in your fraction is negative and the other one is positive, then you can just take that negative sign and move it out in front of the fraction. So our slope is negative 1/3 for this line that contains these 2 points. All right, let's move on to number 3. So we've got x1, x2. And then we've got y1, y2. Let's go ahead and start with those y. So 6 minus a negative 10 would really be plus 10. And then negative 8 minus a negative 8 would be plus 8. And let's see what we get when we simplify. 6 plus 10 is 16. And then negative 8 plus 8 is actually 0. And as I discussed in my previous video, if we divide by 0, we can't have that. We call this an undefined slope. Anything that is divided by 0 is undefined. It can't happen. So I always joke with my students that they're going to math jail if they ever try to divide by 0. So this one, we would say that the slope is undefined. And hopefully that makes sense. If we could try to visualize where these 2 points are, if we have a graph here. So let's see, negative 8, negative 10, that's going to be somewhere down here. Negative 8, positive 6, that's going to be somewhere up here. So that is going to create a vertical line for us because we have those negative 8s are x coordinates for both of those numbers. So they're both going to be one right on top of each other. So that does give us an undefined slope. Let's take a look at this last problem. Let's go ahead and label. So we've got x1, x2, and then we've got y1 and y2. And our y's are going to be 9 minus 9, so this 9 and this 9, over, and we've got 6 plus 4 minus a negative 4 would give us plus 4. And then when we solve this, 9 minus 9 is 0, 6 plus 4 is 10. So whenever we've got a 0 in the numerator, that's actually okay, but it does just equal 0. And hopefully, again, if we kind of visualize where these points are on our coordinate grid, negative 4, 9 would be something like this. Positive 6, 9 would be something like this. And so then we do have that horizontal line. And whenever we have a horizontal line, that is going to be a slope of 0. Thanks so much for watching. I hope this video was helpful. If you'd like, please take a look at the description below. I have some links, including a link to my pre-algebra series, which this video is a part of. I have a ton of videos that go over a lot of different pre-algebra skills that you would see in a typical class. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe. That really does help me to continue making these videos for you. And leave me a comment. Let me know what you thought of this video. I'll see you next time.